All right, and call to order for September 10th or September 19th, sorry, the MWPA Board of Directors meeting. Martina, can you do a roll call, please?
Absolutely. For the town of, we'll go in order of what's on the roll call sheet for the agenda, starting with Fairfax.
Here.
Novato.
Here.
Larkspur.
Here.
Muir Beach. Sleepy Hollow.
Here.
Kentfield.
Here.
Southern Marin.
Here.
Sanderfell.
Here.
Stinson Beach.
Here.
Marin Wood. Bolinas.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Mill Valley.
Here.
Corte Madera.
Here.
County of Marin. Inverness.
Here.
And San Anselmo. And that concludes roll call. We do have, oh. And it looks like Muir Beach just arrived.
Great.
So we'll go ahead and count Muir Beach in the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. Do any board members have any adjustments to the agenda? Nope, not seeing any. All right, County of Marin has arrived. Hi, Dennis.
Here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, open time for public expression. Public is welcome to address the Board of Directors at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the board. Please be advised that pursuant to the Government Code Section 54954.2, the board is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 2 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting. Mute your microphone when not reporting out. Do we have any public expression?
There are no public comments in the room, but if there are any members of the public outside virtually who would like to speak on the current agenda item, please raise your hand in the reactions. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And there are no hands for public comment.
Okay. We are going to move into closed session, but first we have open time for public expression just on closed session items only. There's any public expression?
And there are no hands for comment at this time.
Okay, and seeing no comments, we will adjourn to closed session. So we as a group will be now moving into the side conference room. And then we'll be back. You can leave your stuff here. Everyone will be here and we'll be back. Continue the recording. And are we still on recording? Okay, great, thank you. We'll return to open session and no reportable action was taken in closed session. And now we will move on to executive officer report. Mark Brown.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back after a month off, and I'm going to embarrass her a little bit, but because she's so important, I think it is worth welcoming back Martina Wilson. I told her that a lot of the board members were asking how she's doing and when she was going to be back, and she said, no, they weren't doing that. I said, oh, believe me, they were doing that. So welcome back, Martina. All right, a quick fire season update. I think you've all been watching how the ebbs and flows of the fire season. It's tracking quite a lot like 2021 for me. The feel wise, we had that early start of the season that had a bunch of fires at once, including the park fire. And the reason why I have the park fire as a bullet point on here is that the east side of that fire was in terrible terrain, very difficult to access, and CAL FIRE knew that before the fire ever happened, and they had a ton of veg management projects that were all along that east side that were utilized successfully during the fire. I was able to talk to some of the people who designed it, and then retired battalion chief from Marin County Fire Department, Jeremy Pierce, was the ops section chief on the fire. So I had him slated to come to today's meeting to talk about how they utilize successfully these veg management projects. But he's currently assigned to the line fire down in Southern California right now. So obviously he's not here. But when I was talking to him on the phone yesterday, he goes, Mark, I have another success story for you. There was another veg management project that the fire hit. And before the fire hit it, he goes, it really didn't look like much. And I wasn't sure. It wasn't this big open fire break. It was exactly what you guys have been describing as a shaded field break. And it worked perfectly. So we're targeting November to bring Jeremy in to talk about the success stories of these. The fuel statuses, like I said, are trending very much like 2021. It all depends what happens for the next couple of months as far as any wind events, ignitions, or season-ending rain. And I'll just leave it at that. This next bullet point, Ann's really going to hit further later on, but I thought it was important enough for me to bring it up as well, is that we are making a huge step in maturation for the Marin Wildfire towards using science and data to support our subject matter expertise in the design and the prioritization of our projects. And essentially, and Ann's going to go a little bit deeper, but all I'll say is that we're bringing a bunch of different tools that include subject matter expertise, and we're laying them all on top of each other. And that way we can see where these tools align with each other or perhaps suggest improvements. And then that's how we can start designing our projects better and then prioritizing our projects to make sure that we are getting the right work done. Just one small example. In some of our areas, we may find that the models say it's more important for us to maintain the work that we've started than to start a new project. And so we are getting to that point where we're going to be able to use that type of data for this. Citizens Oversight Committee, still called Citizens Oversight Committee for a little bit longer. I just wanted to let you know that they have completed their report for fiscal year 22-23, and I'll be bringing it to the exec committee in November and then to the full board at the November meeting. A couple outreach opportunities. The Climate and Wildfire Institute has invited Marin Wildfire to speak at a conference that they're putting on up in Tahoe in October. They're keeping it really small, like 60 participants, but it's the lead practitioners in this space. And they've asked us to come and talk. And what's great is we don't have to prepare a slide deck or anything. It's going to be, they call it a lightning talk and panel discussion. So they're going to have a facilitator talking to us, and the panel that we're going to be on is called Regional Case Study, Pace and Scale of Current Data and Technical Solutions. We'll be there. We'll be joined by the University of Colorado, Dr. Hussam Mahmoud, who is one of the first people to create a wildfire propagation model through the built environment. We have the Tahoe Fund there at the Truckee Fire Protection District, and Jason Brooks from Fireside. That'll be who composes the panel that we'll be participating in. We're also, some Marin Wildfire staff will be going to the next Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force meeting, which is a statewide organization. Again, of all the people that are leading in the wildfire mitigation space. Statewide population usually brings about 300 or 400 people to the events. Ann spoke at one that was hosted in Santa Cruz. They host them regionally. So this one that we're going to in October will be in Tahoe. But what we've been working on is the next Central Coast meeting, and we're considered Central Coast for this task force, is we're working on hosting it here in Marin in March 27th, 28th. We have tentative approval from the Wildfire Task Force to host. And so that'll be great for us to be able to host and showcase what Marin Wildfire does. Day one is a typical symposium. Day two includes site visits. So we'll have some site visits of our projects, but they really look at it regionally. So that we'll have site visits in Sonoma County and some of the other Bay Area counties. For example, the meeting that Ann spoke at was in Santa Cruz, but we had a site visit up here that was well attended for one of our projects. And I'll touch on Ember Stomp, but I know Fire Safe Marin will touch on it as well. Huge success. And so Fire Safe Marin won't have to pat themselves on the back. I will for them. The design that they set up was phenomenal. They were able to focus people into a single point of entry. Fire Safe Marin's tent was here. Our tent was there right across from them. And then they had this walkway of amazing photographs of hardened homes and really good fire smart landscaping. And then you went right to the Marin Master Gardener's booth. And so people could see what it could look like. And they were able to go talk to the people that can teach them how to make it look like that. Then just over 70 different businesses or organizations were represented there. If you guys did go and got there early enough, you got to see Jason Weber and myself get dunked into dunk tank. There was one little 12-year-old that I called him my assassin. He just walked up, had the baseball, one throw, and I'm in the water. He came back about 15 minutes later with a little grin on his face, one throw, and I'm in the water. And he's wearing a soccer shirt. But and then I think my favorite part, though, was the demonstration of the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home. Side-by-side demonstration of a wildfire prepared home and a non-wildfire prepared home. And what was remarkable to me was how little fire they lit at the beginning. They just put little dabs of fire in the wood chips. They had the fans that were blowing. They were blowing at 9 miles an hour at the fan, but by the time they got to the structure, the wind was only 6 or 7 miles an hour. So we're not talking about a lot of wind. And it shows how effective Zone Zero is, how effective non-wood connectors to your house, and then your gutters and eaves. And so the video has been produced, and when it's ready to go live, we'll make sure everyone has an opportunity to see it. But I think for me, the most remarkable part was watching where the wood fence came into the house and the wind eddies that were created by, and then having a combustible wood fence and how they all interacted with each other. To me, that was the first thing that destroyed the house. It was going to be destroyed anyway, but that was the thing that destroyed it the fastest. With that, I'll take questions.
Any questions from the board for Mark?
I staffed the Fire Safe Marin booth for a few hours, and this is my second year doing it. I can't remember. I was really pleased to see so many people where Spanish was their primary language there. And that was an increase in my own anecdotal information from the previous year. So much of the materials were picked up by the families that came where Spanish was their first language, or they asked me if they could take more for their neighbors. So I think that was an excellent change from last time.
Thank you. Julie?
I have two comments. I have a question about the Climate and Wildfire Institute panel. Is that something that we could watch or see later?
I'll see. They made it really tight to get into that. They were even making it so we couldn't invite our staff to it. So
Okay.
I'm not sure why, but I'll learn more. This is my first opportunity. I'll find out if we can get a recording of it.
Okay. And then I wanted to mention that Marin Master Gardeners made a 3-dimensional model with a house, a hardened house, and the various zones going Zone 0, Zone 1, and Zone 2. And Kathleen Cutter has that model. She actually brought it to a Firewise gathering that we held yesterday in Ross, where Mark and Kathleen both spoke. People really like to see that model because it's visually you can see it three-dimensionally. So if anybody has a need for that kind of a prop, Kathleen has it. It takes a little bit of assembly, but it's really effective. And thank you so much for being there last night. You and Kathleen, you were fabulous.
Happy to be there.
Any other questions? Just would also like to thank all the board members who came and walked around with their badge on and are, even just to see the materials and see what was going on. It was really great to have so many represented. I think we had with seven of our board members. So thank you. Okay. Is there any public comment for this item?
There are no hands at this time.
Okay. Any other board discussion? Is there going to be an Ember Stomp next year?
We're working on that. We are at a decision point. Have we hit saturation? Because we had about the same numbers. So we're going to have a discussion whether we hit saturation, if the level of effort is worth the benefit that we get out of it. And one of the things we need to analyze is it the same people showing up each year, or are we starting to hit a different population each year? I think if it's the latter, we keep going.
Can I just make one comment?
Please.
Ember Stomp was amazing. Yes. I did make a comment to some of the coordinators and leaders there in that there was another fire that was burned, Mark. It was the juniper that was cut and ignited. And this happened at previous two Ember Stomps ago that the people milling around, I guess they have to follow a calendar. I think I mentioned it too, but there were a lot of people who were not aware that they were doing the demonstration, and they were milling about and looking at the various tables and getting good information, but they missed the juniper burn. And then I asked folks to go out. But so a suggestion again is that next year, that 5 minutes prior to these incredible demonstrations that everyone would really want to see, that they walk through the crowd, mill around with a little bullhorn and say, folks, in 5 minutes, there's going to be this following demonstration, because a lot of people missed it. So anyway, that's my
All right.
comment.
Thank you.
Constructive comment. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, moving on. Consent calendar. The opportunity for public comment on the consent calendar items will occur prior to the board's discussion on the consent calendar. The board may approve the entire consent calendar with one action. In the alternative, items on the consent calendar may be removed by any board or staff member for separate discussion and vote. I'll now take public comment on the consent calendar.
There are no hands at this time.
Any board members wish to pull any items on the consent? No? Okay. I have a motion then to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Did you catch that? All right. Perfect, thank you. And then do you want to do roll call?
Starting with Fairfax.
We actually, since we have everyone here, we can do all in favor.
Okay,
All
all
in-
in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. All right, moving on. Action items. So, next item is the executive officer evaluation and compensation. I will read the statement I'm supposed to read. The proposed action will adopt a resolution approving a merit adjustment of 2.5% and a cost of living adjustment COLA of 3.5% for a total adjustment of 6% to executive officer Mark Brown's salary for the 23-24 fiscal year. MWPA's facilitator and negotiator Beth Pollard will provide the staff report on this item. Do we have Beth?
I'm unable to start my video.
24, 25, right? Yeah. Let me just
can
make a correction. So the total adjustment of 6% to executive officer Mark Brown's salary for the 24-25 fiscal year. There was a typo in my notes. Thank you.
There we go. Good afternoon, President Kurtz and members of the board. In previous actions, the board has adopted an executive officer employment agreement, compensation policy and plan, and performance criteria for the position. An evaluation of the executive officer's performance for July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 was conducted in accordance with this board direction under the guidance of the executive committee. This year, assessments were received from members of the Operations Committee as well as from members of the Board of Directors. In sum, the assessments were overwhelmingly positive. This outcome meets the threshold in the employment agreement of at least a satisfactory review to warrant a merit pay increase of 2.5% and a 3.5% cost of living adjustment for the executive officer effective July 1st, 2024. Specifics of the fiscal impact of the merit increase and cost of their living adjustment are contained in the staff report and resolution. The total fiscal impact of $14,374 is in line with the board adopted fiscal year 24-25 budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Any questions from the board? This item? Seeing none. Okay, any items for the public, from the public?
There are no hands at this time.
Okay, and I'll bring it back to the board. And if there's no other discussion or comments, then I am looking for a vote to approve.
So I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. So I'll just read the vote to approve the resolution approving merit-based increase in COLA for the executive officer for fiscal year 24-25. Thank you and congratulations. And thank you. Oh, vote. Oh, yeah. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you. It's an honor to serve and I love my job.
All right, moving on. Staff reports, September finance report. There we go. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, good afternoon, directors. I've gotten some feedback that a little bit more information from me is welcome. I'm sensitive to everyone's time, so I won't be long, but I'll just review this report and feel free to ask me any questions now or give me a call or send me an email if you have any other questions. But just to review, this 20% refers to how far in the year we are. So we take this date, we're almost a quarter through. And then here, this column will be red if it's higher than where we should be at this time. And so if it is red, I try to offer an explanation as to why it is. For example, the evacuation study, that budget number will be updated when we do the revised budget, probably in January. Rents, we prepaid the rent. And then the only other thing was, I just thought maybe this one's probably okay, and I don't know why it's high. So that's an overview. Fireside, we paid them 137 prepaid for the year, so that would explain that overage. And so right now, core projects, the whole core program is at 13%. That's pretty good because there's probably a little lag here in vendor billing. So we're at 13%. And then one more thing I wanted to explain is that the MWPA wants total admin costs to only be 1% of 60% of Measure C. So right now we're at 12% of the budget, but then here in this note, I say where we are towards that 10% goal. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the asterisk down here, it just reminds us that even if a column's red, it might not be the end of the world. It might not be, it's going to end up being over budget. And we'll offer explanations about it, about what you can expect. And then we're currently, the member agencies have their deadline for last year's reporting, and the deadline is this September 30th. We did a ton of work with them last year, getting their reports up to speed and getting them all on the same page as to how they should be reporting. So I'm hoping that this year it's going to be a much smoother and quicker process. And then once we have their final reports, we'll know what the unspent funds are, and we can update the budget to include any prior year rollover if they request that. And that's my report. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Melissa, can you provide just a little bit about when we're going to get the revenue for distribution?
Yes, we get, the first distribution comes in mid-December and it will be 55% of this, plus or minus a little bit. We've been pretty close. And then we get 40% in April and the last 5%, we say June, but we don't get it until August, but we accrue it back into June. And then the county interest, we get that on a quarterly basis, but it takes them about 2 months to report that to us. So for the quarter ending September 30th, we'll know that in December or so.
Thank you.
And
Mhm.
President Kurtz, if I may, I saw some questioning looks when we were talking about the two different percentages on the admin budget. So just what it is that 10% of the core, which is 60% of our budget, that's the cap. So 10% of the core is the cap of our admin cost that we can have for the year. That 12% that's there is how much of that 10% we've spent. So the 1% to the right means we've spent 1% of the core on admin charges. So we are tracking really well.
Thank you, Mark.
Please.
Alyssa, core program item 6010, which is the evacuation study, $315, nothing budgeted, 315. It says 100%, and it says not yet budgeted. I find that a little confusing. What's the message there?
I'll answer that one.
Thanks,
So
Mark.
what it is that the evacuation ingress egress risk assessment was not part of the 24-25 work plan. However, there's still work remaining from 23-24's work plan. So when we close the books for 23-24 and make the budget adjustment for 24-25, that's when that funding bucket will be filled.
So there is yet work to be done. There is yet work to be done. It's 23-24 budget. And
It'll be sequestered for the continuation of that project in the 24-25.
okay, so we will see a request for
It'll be unspent revenue, unspent funding from 23-24 will get moved into 24-25.
okay, yeah, thanks. It was just unclear to me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any other budget questions or reporting? No?
Just a comment.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the details. Appreciate it.
Thank
Alright,
you.
Thank you. Any comments from the public?
There are no hands at this time.
Okay. No motion is required on this item, and we'll move it over to Anne for an update on the work plan.
Great, thank you. Going to share my screen here. There we go. All right. Let's see if I can advance slides almost. Cursor has disappeared. Right? Ah, that'll do it. All right, always fun to troubleshoot in a live meeting. All right. So, thank you to those of you who joined us on September 11th. We hosted a field trip to the San Rafael, San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone project. This is our 4th field trip for that project, and that's because it's such a high-profile project. It's been the subject of newspaper articles and op-eds, and we really want to show our work. So we hosted somewhere around 40 people to that project site, again, to show off the next phase of work on the kind of the eastern hillside to the east of the cemetery. We've been working with Marin County Parks on this next phase as well, and some Measure A funding will help pay for portions of this project on Marin County Parks lands. So a really great opportunity to work with them and highlight Measure A and the importance of Measure A. So that next phase is somewhere around 20 acres, and broom removal is happening as we speak, and additional on at least a portion of it, and additional work will be starting as soon as one of the contractors is available. They've been really busy with some of the fires out there supporting some of the fire suppression work. So a little bit of a delay there, but we are hopeful and very excited to move forward with eucalyptus thinning there. Another field trip is coming up. You'll see an email in your inbox soon with more information. There's currently information on the project webpage, and that's for the Greater Novato Shaded Field Break. Again, we love to bring people out and show our work. So we've been working with Marin Wildfire, who's in the room, and also Marin County Parks to host another field trip to this project area. That's going to be October 22nd. This will be a pretty fast field trip, maybe an hour, ADA accessible. So if you have mobility issues, please come on out and see us and join us and listen in. We're also working with Southern Marin Fire staff to host a field trip in Southern Marin. There's a lot of great work happening down there as well. And so more information will be coming soon. A little bit of information, updates on the CHIPPR program, the grant program. CHIPPR program is humming along. It started in April. We're on the 5th round of chipping right now. That's 5 out of 6 rounds. Completed over 3,000 pickups, and demand continues to grow. It's a very popular program and gets really great reviews because there's a rating process after you've used the program. Our resident grant program, another very popular program. The first round of resident grant funding opened in July. A significant amount of money was allocated right away, so we needed to close the program and do the math and tally up what expenses were allocated. That was about $433,000 right there. Staff has been working with residents to make sure that their applications are complete, their photos and receipts are in, and then we'll be opening a second round in October. And this will probably go quickly. So if you're listening out there and you're interested in applying, make sure to apply early. We're also working on our direct assistance program, which will be launched in the very near future, actually, and staff has been working with member agency staff to identify the parcels that are high priority and there's a lot of need, and then starting to reach out to those residents to see if they'd like to opt into this program. I'm just going to highlight very quickly this topic. We have a presentation on this topic later in this agenda. This is data collection. We really needed to develop a system with our GIS contractor, Green Info Network, and our member agencies to collect consistent data across the whole JPA on what vegetation management practices are happening where, map them, and really take this opportunity to collect data on project implementation. And we've rolled that out. We rolled it out in July and are now collecting data on our projects and going back in time to collect previously implemented data as well. Jacob's going to talk about that later in this agenda, so we'll leave it there. But it's an important kind of topic to bring up before I go into this kind of dense slide. Apologies for all the words. We are working really hard with our member agencies, our consultants, our land management agencies to think about all the tools, the data, the science, the models that we have been developing over the last few years. We've been putting a lot of time and energy into these models. So now that we have them available, how are we going to use them? It's one thing to talk about them in theory, to dabble in it here and there. It's another thing to really think about the nuts and bolts of how to incorporate that science, that data into decision-making that we do, especially on vegetation management, but elsewhere as well. So we're diving into this topic now. We are holding a series of workshops through September, October, November, maybe into December with member agency staff and consultants, land management agencies to work through it. So I'll go into the process a little bit in a moment, but we're also going to use this to think through our metrics. So you've seen and discussed, objectives, metrics, what are our measures of success? And so this is all connected. We'll be sharing those findings with you, as well as the Advisory Technical Committee and Operations Committee. So this is a series of workshops through this fall. Really wanted to dive into this before the next work plan development season. And I just want to note that data collection that your staff is working on and figuring out and working on with us is really critical to keeping these models up to date and relevant and giving us real-time information about how much we're reducing risk. So the process is really step one is to dive into each of these models one by one, ask questions, ask what the assumptions are, what data are they using, what vegetation layers, and what are the limitations, what do each offer. So we are going one by one through each of these tools: the fuel break risk assessment, the pathways modeling, the on-parcel risk assessment, land tender, evacuation, ingress, egress risk assessment, LADRIS AI, all of these different tools, and digging in deep. And so all of your member agencies, their brains are overflowing right now with a lot of details, and they're asking really great questions and really engaging. It's a really good process so far. We're very excited. So step 2 is really taking all of those bits and pieces and brainstorming how to use them all together. So how do they complement each other to give a bigger picture about how to prioritize dollars, effort, etc. Then we're going to be developing recommendations for how to best use all of those tools, the data, the science, the colors on the map, to make some good decisions, to really inform the decision making. And in many cases, it's already, reinforcing the decisions that folks on the ground, our local experts, are already making on a daily basis, where they think the priorities are, the roads that we know are high priority, the landscapes that we know that are high risk. It's really confirming a lot of those decisions. So that's really great to see. How do these tools help us develop new projects to put on the landscape? Maybe there are locations where the different tools all really point to certain locations to be really critical. Are there existing projects on the landscape that might do well if we widened over here, shifted it, over here into this pathway, etc.? Are there modifications to existing projects that we should really consider? And then in terms of existing projects, again, how do we maintain them into the future? Where are we putting maintenance dollars for the biggest bang for the buck? In a 60-mile-long shaded fuel break or a 30-mile-long shaded fuel break, is every inch of that as important as the next? We can dive into that and really think through, maybe some areas need maintenance every year, every 2 years, and maybe others can be every 5 years. So we really are diving into how to get the biggest bang for the buck for our dollars as they're stretched more and more thin, and make science-based, data-backed decisions alongside all that great local expertise that we have. And then we're going to be sharing all those recommendations to the ATC, Operations Committee, and you all, our Board of Directors. And then we're going to be incorporating those recommendations into our next work plan development season, starting in December. So coming up. So lots going on there. Another big item that I want to let you guys know about is our core vegetation management projects are now available on our web map. So now we have a link on our website that is live as of today, very exciting, to show folks where projects are on the landscape in relation to their home, their neighborhood, etc. So now you can go to our website and find it. I'm going to have a couple of slides and then I'm going to demo that. So if you go to our home page, you click on projects, and then you go to vegetation management. That's where you find us. So this link here, click here. That's where you click. I'm going to stop sharing and then go to the website and go ahead and show you guys how to find it. Okay. So on our home page, go to projects and vegetation management. And this link here takes you to a landing page with a lot of logos on it and a little bit of verbiage. We have a lot of member agencies and affiliates who help us implement projects. So you'll see a whole lot of logos. And then a little bit of an explanation here about these projects. These are just core vegetation management projects. Vegetation management is, maybe 41% of our next fiscal year, of this fiscal year's budget, but it is 90% of what people talk about out there in the media, etc. So we do recognize that this is only one thing that Marin Wildfire does, but we're really excited to highlight this on a map, and we hope to highlight activities related to other goals in the future. This page also notes that just because polygons are on a map doesn't mean every square inch is going to be implemented. There are, many miles of roadways that are covered under CEQA documents that will be implemented as needed, but not necessarily tomorrow. And in any given fiscal year, only a portion of those miles, acres will be implemented. So I just wanted to note that. You find the map by clicking enter. And then you've got our JPA split up into 5 zones. And if you choose a zone, since we talked about West Marin, we'll click on West Marin. You choose a zone and then you can zoom in and click on your polygons, on your roads, etc. And by clicking on these items, you get photos. You get information about the project, both in English and Spanish. And you get a link to the project webpage. So it's an easy way to go from project to project and find out more about all the different vegetation management projects that we're doing. So this link takes you to the project webpage for the current West Marin Zone Evacuation Route project, and we'll update it. We're ready to update it with the now updated, expanded project. So each zone, and over here you can, on the right, you click on this bookmark page and that takes you back to home. And so you can do that with any of the vegetation management projects that we have that are board approved, that where environmental compliance is done and project implementation can take place. So that's the end of my report. I just wanted to share with you how to access it. Feel free to share this link and information with any members of the public who are curious about what Marin Wildfire is doing, and happy to take questions.
Any questions, Barbara?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. So on the resident grants, you mentioned that when we open in October, it'll probably be gone in a few days. Last year, I believe we asked OPS or ATTC to look and see if there was a way that they could redirect funds to add more funds to that. Is that something we'd consider? I mean, I think this is probably the most popular program for people on the ground, very tangible for them. And we do have to remember, we do have to reauthorize this tax, but just sitting at Ember Stomp, that was kind of the most exciting thing that people knew. They liked the other stuff, but this is something that, affected them on a daily basis. It's on. Sorry, I wasn't close enough. Shall I repeat that whole thing? No. Okay. So possible?
Yeah, so for anyone who didn't hear, the question is, can we add additional dollars really to the resident grant program, because it's so popular and we get so many questions about it. And it's certainly something that we can discuss and with the operations committee and ATC and determine how we might go about doing that. But you're right, it is a really popular program. It's important work. It's very focused on the items that really make homes and yards more ember resistant. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, just to follow up on Barbara's question, 'cause in the staff report, it says, I just want a clarification for what you meant by this. Invitations to participate in the direct assistance program have been sent to select residents and staff. We'll soon be drafting scope of work. So those select residents, are those ones after an inspection have been identified? Just clarifying that. I didn't know if we were how the selection process went. It's after the inspection.
Yes, I believe it's after the inspection, and it's been in collaboration with our member agencies to determine where the highest risk are and the most need. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are actually using some of our data and science on this. We have what we've created a dynamic risk score that is assigned to each of the findings. And then so we were able to cull our inspections and find some of the riskiest properties, but also those who don't have the means to solve those risks. And then we've represented that list of properties to our member agencies for them to do a further evaluation of who we want to invite to the direct assistance.
Thanks.
Can I
Sorry
see
about
some,
all that.
Bruce?
Yeah, I find this, this incorporating data tools and modeling into project planning implementation just really thrilling and exciting and groundbreaking. I just want to compliment you first on the initiative and taking the bold step forward of doing what I believe is in putting all of these things, stacking all of this data together. There's about 8 data layers or so. And then figuring out how are we doing, where are the hot spots, what do we need to do? I'm thrilled. My question is this, number one, isn't this unprecedented? Taking all those 8 data layers and smushing them together and trying to make some strategic investment decisions?
I would guess yes.
Yeah.
We tend to do a lot of things that are unprecedented, and I think this is one of them. Yeah.
So it's exciting. So my question is, within the budget, I know that we had Willow Labs on board and others. The consultants that we currently have, is it Willow Labs, primarily Willow Labs is doing the analytical work for us?
Willow Labs is one of the consultants involved, yes. And so the shaded fuel break risk assessment is Willow Labs, the pathways modeling is Willow Labs, and that has been, he's been a very active participant in the process so far, yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering, are there any peers to our efforts that might even just be invited just to observe? And I mean, we're doing this ourselves, and just to enrich. If there's anything we're missing, this is brand new. I'm thrilled, but Mark and Ann, are there others out there that are participating in this kind of a groundbreaking analytical, algorithmic, effort, and that we could also invite besides ourselves?
So yes, let me touch on a few other tools that we have as well. We have Willow Labs, who's a complete all-star, and every time I hear Scott talk, I'm like, wow. And then we still have Sonoma Technology, and that's part of that evacuation, ingress, egress risk assessment continuing. Ladris, which we have the subscription for, so the services that we get from Ladris AI is included in that. And then we brought on a new partner, and that is Vibrant Planet with a product they call Land Tender. And so Land Tender is a product that's grown in popularity throughout the nation and the state. And as far as inviting other partners, Ann and I actually had about an hour, or was it 2 hour long conversation with Truckee Fire. And to use a term, we completely geeked out on what each other is doing. They are doing close to the level of data analysis that we are. And then we continue to reach out to other organizations. And then that Climate and Wildfire Institute, that's exactly the forum for us to be engaging with the others. And that's why we're with Truckee Fire and the Tahoe Fund to talk about that, to help bring other people on board.
Just my last question is to make sure that there may be some more this is a big gulp. And as you say, we funded for a lot of those entities. I don't recall Land Tender being in our budget, although you have $50,000 authorization, it doesn't really matter. But if there's a need for additional analytical work or funding, do we have some flexibility in our budget to stretch and to make those necessary investments?
Yeah, we have room in operational costs and in new and emerging. We have a budget line for new and emerging opportunities. Land Tender fits into our GIS line item, so we had the funding within our GIS for that.
Okay, compliments to this effort. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Other questions, Julie?
I'm just wondering, sorry, this is all great, and it's so wonderful to see 4 years of work all kind of coming together. I'm just wondering, when the work plan is being developed, it would be great to somehow utilize the data to defend the projects that are being proposed in the work plan, so that the board could see that and the public could see that, so that they know that there's a return on all this investment.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and it may be a new section of the work plan coming soon.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, please.
Thank you so much, and to know mentioned the joint data sets, and I imagine those were all just siloed themselves, and now we're bringing them all together. My question is about the machine learning. So to what extent, and you can perhaps respond anecdotally, is AI outperforming or helping to bolster decision making? And are any differences between the AI, thank you, the AI driven machine learning and human judgment?
That's a great question, and I think we might need several hours and maybe multiple scientists to help answer that. But I do think that one of the things that we're seeing and throughout all of this is the value of local expertise. That there's no way to account for all variables on a landscape. So we're going out, and when things don't seem right in the modeling, we might send somebody out to go take photos and ground truth some of the assumptions of those models. And so the models will become more and more accurate and reliable over time. And as we collect data through project implementation over time, so far we have not seen a substitute for local expertise and all the folks who've been fighting fires on the landscape, who know exactly how, which hillsides have more broom than others, et cetera. So that's going to continue, I think, being a really key component all the decision making. Anything to add? Fred?
Yeah, thanks. Is the grant funding broken down by zones? Is there a certain dollar amount that's allocated to each zone? That's question one. And then question two is, do you have the breakdown somewhere that would show geographically where that money's going? So we could see, hey, West Marin is getting more, not more, but maybe more residents are getting into it from a certain geographical area than others.
Are you talking for the whole core project or the core budget, or?
Just the resident part of it for the grant program.
So the grant program, so just as a background, the core, we must spend 80% of the core in the zone that it was gathered in. We look at it across the entire JPA and the entire budget rather than looking at individual projects. So Chipper Days and grants, as an example, may not meet those 80% thresholds. It's more based on demand and the risk assessments. But at the end of the day, we bring it all together to make sure we're hitting that 80% threshold.
One question on the big gulp here. It says that member agency staff and consultants, is the room open for folks who have not yet been involved, but who are responsible for doing vegetation management planning for respective member agencies?
That's what's
okay.
in there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the room, there's chairs at the table, because this is a learning experience. Yeah. By the way, I want to recognize Novato's vegetation manager, Sarah Loberton, who does incredible work. She is the Novato Shaded Fuel Break. No. Anyway, she does great work. I want to welcome her. Thanks for coming. So good. Anyway.
All right.
Yes. If I could just respond, the project managers who are implementing vegetation management projects in the field, collecting data, who really dove into providing help as we developed our data collection system. Those are folks in the room as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Julie?
I just have one more comment, and that was from the San Rafael San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone field trip, which was great. I think overall I counted 6 or 7 different agencies who are working together to do that work. And it seemed pretty seamless. It seemed like everyone was getting along. So it was wonderful to see. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Take it to the public. If there's any public comment on the work plan.
There are no hands at this time.
Thank you. Anything else? We don't have a motion on this item. All right, we're on to committee reports. Fire Safe Marin. Meg, have you recovered?
Yes, we're still basking in it. Good afternoon, all board members and members of the public with us today. Ember Stomp has, I want to dovetail on what everyone else here said, was by our accounts a great success too. And Jen, can you just share the slide that we just made, a couple slides just to hit on a few highlights of the event. And first off, to thank everyone here for their part in it. It was a huge community effort, and I think the most gratifying thing for us is to see the united front that we give to the public. And really, all the agencies came out in such a big way. Master gardeners were there. I mean, OEM and the dunk tank, and everyone really brought it. And I thank everyone also for their efforts in getting your constituents there and passing on the message and really helping us to highlight and get the audience there. Jen, can you share the slide on Ember Stump? I just wanted to share with you a few of the numbers that we collected along the way. And first off, it took 20 major donors. And Ember Stomp is, we fundraise for it independently. It is above and beyond our work plan that we submit to you. And it is a tremendous effort. Thanks again to all the agencies and organizations here in the room and beyond that gave to the event. We were able to raise enough again this year to make it a cost neutral event. We had 30 exhibits and demonstrations that were all fantastic, many of which were mentioned earlier. We had 75 participating organizations, and we had 100 volunteers this year. And from our perspective, this was one of the core reasons why the event was such a great success. People really had a curated experience from the moment that they walked onto the fairgrounds with all the welcomers, straight to the Marin Wildfire tents and Fireside Marin and the fireside, and brought straight through to the landscaping, left off at Marin Master Gardeners, who had a beautifully coordinated demonstrations, taken right on to the home hardening tent, and went on and on and on from there. So we had 5,000 community members estimated coming again this year, and we estimate that number by the clicks that we took at people coming into the entrance, the front entranceway, along with the sales at the food vendors, and the estimates from Red Barn organizers who also organized the Marin County Fair, so that they really have a sense of people on that particular site. So we feel pretty good about that. And I think that even the brighter spot in the participation was that people came and stayed and engaged. So people were there for hours. And for those of us that were there, you walk around and you saw how many young families were there. It was mentioned earlier that there was a large Spanish-speaking community. We had the promotores from North Marin Community Services, as well as many of our Spanish-speaking ambassadors and defensible space inspectors out really engaging with the public and making sure that we had all the materials available in both Spanish and in English for everyone to enjoy. So on all accounts, we are just really happy, grateful, and tired. I also want to make a big shout out to Rich Shortle for his tremendous effort in fundraising for this event, as well as building alongside Roger and Steve Quarles for the defensible space area. So the next thing on just for the sake of time, I just want to point to one other thing that we produced in the past month, which is the first part of our next video in the Wildfire Behavior series with Mark Brown. And we debuted the first half of this, which is in total, it's only an 8-minute video, but it packs a lot in it. And the first 4 minutes looks at wildfire. It's called Could It Happen Here? And the title of this comes from when Mark and I were discussing really one of the most pervasive questions that people keep asking as we witness all these horrific fires around the state and up and down the coast. People really feel nervous and say, could it happen here? You know, we feel quite safe and somehow, you know, missed by the worst of it. But the reality is that it very well, could happen, you know, spoiler alert, yes, it can. And it has happened here. And so we point back to the 1923 fire, and then we look at what are the major changes that have brought us to the catastrophic wildfires today. And the second half of the video looks at positioning Marin Wildfire as the preeminent lead in wildfire preparedness, focusing on the shaded fuel breaks, the evacuations clearance, the home evaluations, the grants, and the public education. And then we leave it with pointing to what are the responsibilities of each of the homeowners and residents to be prepared for that day. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with that. We have the first 4 minutes of it, which we could put in the chat, I think, I'm not sure. But the 8 minutes should be done, the full video should be done within 2 weeks. We're just waiting for a couple shots of good footage for the shaded fuel break updates. So with that, the last thing I wanted to do was also let you know that we are having next Tuesday, we're holding a landscape workshop with North California Landscape Association at the Marin Builders Association, and we're inviting landscapers and yard work people and everybody to come and learn about fire smart landscape design and maintenance. And this will be the first of our events that will be qualified people for being able to apply to be put on Fire Safe Marin's website as landscape professionals who have some training in this area. And we've also just wanted to let you know, we have submitted a detailed report of our past 2 months' activities, and I hope that you've had a chance to look that over. And we'd be happy to take questions at this time for any of the activities mentioned in it.
Thank you, thank you. All right, any questions for Fire Safe Marin? Yeah, good. You're getting a round of applause.
Oh, right back at you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see, do we have any public comments?
And I see no hands for a comment at this time.
Okay. And we have no motion on this item. Thank you so much. Go back to sleep.
Thank you.
Really appreciate all the work. Okay. And now we'll move on to data reporting. And we have Jacob Edmund here. We'll report on this item. Hi, Jacob.
Hey, how you doing? Just sharing my screen 1 second. All right. Good afternoon, directors. I'm here today. I'm very proud to present along many months of work on a brand new data collection program for all of Marin Wildfire's vegetation management projects, which is a major step forward in how we track, coordinate, evaluate, and talk about the vegetation management work that we're doing throughout the county. So I want to talk briefly just like what the system is, how it works, what it looks like. So it starts with vegetation managers who are on the ground implementing these projects, and they collect data. It takes about, actually on the left right here is a screenshot. You can do it on your phone. It takes about 5 minutes. And they take data as the project is being implemented, as crews are out there doing the work, so that it is like the most accurate on the ground data that we can get. The data is spatially related. It uses GIS or Geographic Information System, which means that the data is tied to a specific area and time. You can see what that looks like on the right, where you have a specific polygon that someone has sketched out on a map, and then the data that they collect will be tied to that polygon. That's really helpful because it helps us sort of display where the project is. It helps us return to that same place to do retreatment, and it also helps us map on a regional and countywide level as a fire is projected to move through an area, where specifically is that treatment, what specifically is that treatment, and how long ago was it. NWPA, Marin Wildfire, then hosts that data centrally across all the member agencies. But everyone has access, everyone within the member agencies has access to it. And that allows us to analyze how effective that data, how effective the treatment is, where the treatments are, as well as to share with project partners. One of the major partners here being the state, which we report to on the vegetation management projects, and report it out to the broader residents of Marin. This is really something that we're excited about, being able to report on a county-wide level where we're working and where we're reducing risk. And that data is all collected on the cloud through a program called ArcGIS. Before I want to show what exactly what we're going to do with the data, I want to talk a little bit about how we got here and the steps that we took to develop this program. So first, the story starts with you all, the directors, creating the strategic measures and ordering us as staff to develop ways to report on them. We can't do this by just guessing. We can't do it by going out and kind of eyeballing it. We need to have a way that we can collect data and feed it into a system that will give us meaningful analysis on how, where, and how much we're reducing risk throughout the county. So that was sort of step one. And a lot of the data collection and monitoring came from this place of wanting to report on these strategic measures. And the next step that we as staff did was to reach out to land management agencies across the state, across Marin, as well as subject matter experts and biologists to determine best practices of how we can collect this type of data and what is worth collecting and what's not. This was really important. Our ethos from the get-go has always been that we want to collect a handful of things well and be able to report on them effectively, rather than trying to collect everything under the sun and then running out of steam, running out of capacity. So that was step one. We certainly learned from the missteps and stole the successes of a lot of our partner agencies, including state parks, county parks, as well as our consulting biologists with Sequoia and Panorama. After that, after we kind of did our literature review of it, Marin Wildfire staff convened meetings with all the veg managers across all of the member agencies and zones to jointly develop a data collection program. And this is actually something that's still ongoing. We have a working group that we meet with regularly to go over what's working, what's not working, how can we improve, what do we want to do with this data. And that was something that we developed really from the ground up in consultation with member agency staff, some of whom are here today. And this is something that was really essential because first of all, we want to be in cooperation with our member agencies. The whole point of this is to sort of collaborate across the county, but also because their subject matter expertise made our program a lot better. Actually, Sarah, you're here, and that's a great example because your definitions that were aligned with state definitions was really critical in the development of our metrics and definitions. So shout out, Sarah. After that, after we sort of develop common ground and kind of sketching out what we want this program to look like, we worked with our GIS partner at Green Info Network to develop customized data forms and maps for each zone so that every veg manager can have it how they want it. And that it can be easy and simple and customized to report on that data. So every zone has their own way that they submit data, their own way that they record data, and it all flows back centrally to Marin Wildfire. And then finally, data is collected. We're collecting data right now, and we can share it with project partners. We can put it in dashboards and give it back to those agency veg managers, and we can use it to drive meaningful analysis and evaluation of our vegetation management projects. So I want to talk a little bit about how we want to use this data. So first of all, like I mentioned before, being able to report on strategic measures is kind of our priority here. This is something that has been a direction from the board for a while, and we want to be able to make good on that promise. And so that's definitely sort of the primary goal of this form. But also we want to be able to share with the state, with granting organizations, as well as project partners. I mentioned that our definitions of how we how we define vegetation communities, treatment types are aligned with how the state defines those things. And so that makes it really easy to report to the state and other agencies that are reporting to the state, like state parks, national parks, other counties. And so it makes it both scalable and comparable, both within the JPA and outside it. Another major step forward that we're taking with this data is to be able to feed the data that we collect into our partners at Willow Labs, who can then use that on the ground data to refine and improve our models of how fire spreads in Marin and how our vegetation management disrupts that. That's helpful in both evaluating the effectiveness of projects that have or are being implemented and how to develop new projects. And then finally, and I think this is one of the most important uses of this tool, is we want to be able to tell our story to the residents of Marin about how and where and how much Marin wildfire is reducing risk. This is important in how we reach out to residents, how we make the case for an effective reauthorization of the measure, and also how we tell people that we're effectively spending tax dollars. So on the lower right-hand corner, you'll see this is a screenshot of our web map. We definitely are exploring ways that we can sort of combine this data collection and the web map together, as well as being able to talk to academic partners at UC Berkeley and Stanford to drive retreatment and analysis of how effective our projects are. So I also want to talk briefly about what we want to do next. We have the system. It's live as of July 1st, and we've been working to make sure that it's been usable and getting off the ground this field season. But as the system matures and as we get a larger body of data, we can leverage that data in order to do even more with it. And so some of the things that we're looking forward to is developing ecological and long-term change monitoring. As a lot of our projects get older and older, what are the long-term changes that we can expect to see in the landscapes that we're treating? When we pull broom over and over and over again in the same spots and deplete the seed bank, what grows back? As we impact shrub, if we change how much light hits the forest floor, what grows back? How are we changing the biodiversity and species abundance of these areas? These are things that we're really interested to find out and that we want to put resources to, because a lot of our sort of professional expertise tells us that these treatments actually increase biodiversity and make our landscapes a better mosaic and a more diverse place. Another thing that we're really interested in talking about is taking this data and using it to demonstrate to insurance agencies, as well as IBHS, how risk is being reduced. We can't just say, well, yep, we reduce risk. Like, we have to be able to back up our assertions. And if we can use this implementation data showing how and where and how much we're reducing that risk, we can help solve the insurance crisis in Marin County and deliver lower premiums for property owners. One of the things that I'm really excited about is remote sensing. This is something that we're looking into with Stanford, using very high resolution canopy penetrating satellite imagery to detect when and how much we need to retreat areas. That's something that is really exciting and that can really only be derived from this type of data collection that we're doing. And finally, this is something that we do need a good bit of data before we would look into this. But one thing that's been raised and that we're interested in collaborating with is data sharing with first responders, so that we can display the polygons of our treatment on tablet command, both for situational awareness and so that they have a better idea of what's just generally on the ground. We've even thought about like a heat map of date since last treatment or projected flame length or things like that. So there's a lot of really exciting new horizons that come out with this that are sort of built on the platform of good, solid data collection that is comparable across the county. And finally, we say this a lot, but I really do think that this is a new phase of maturation for this agency, that we are collecting data on every single acre that we treat, and that data is comparable across the county, that everyone's talking to each other. And this is the type of thing that Marin Wildfire was created to do. We provide infrastructure, a common platform for all these member agencies to contribute to. Everyone can talk to each other, and we can leverage the sort of powers of big data to drive more effective and more efficient analysis and decision making of these vegetation management projects. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Wow. First, wait, second, can you just introduce yourself a little?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. My name's Jacob. I'm a vegetation management specialist with Marin Wildfire.
And thank goodness there's somebody like you who is that into all this. At this level. Stephen.
Jacob, you're like 3 shots of espresso.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
sorry.
thank you for it. No. Go back a slide, please. Demonstrating to insurance agency partners how risk is being reduced for property owners. So I think everybody in the room knows someone or is someone who has had their insurance jacked up. I know that Director Brown has been through the mill and is also working hard in this area. I guess a question and then a couple of comments. Are the insurance providers taking any interest in our data gathering capability yet?
Absolutely. In fact, we've had VeriRisk, which is one of the largest cat risk modelers. We've been in frequent meetings with them on how this could look like. And then the Moore Foundation has actually funded a project that is being managed by Milliman, which is an actuarial for the insurance industry, to create what's called the data commons. And so all this type of data that we are going would go into the data commons, and then the cat risk modelers would have access to that. And then they would be able to put that into their modeling on their first decision whether or not to insure, and then eventually rate setting.
Do we have a policy framework regarding what levels of data are shared with insurance providers?
We do, and I've been spending quite a bit of time reevaluating and making sure of the security of our policy and at what level that for this type of data, there's no security issues when it comes to the veg management data. The security issues comes with the home evaluations, fenceable space. So that's where we have been spending a lot of time analyzing that and also comparing what data is already out there that has been gained through basically aerial imagery. So believe it or not, the residents have no reasonable or no legal expectation of privacy if something can be seen from from the air in FAA regulated space. And so if an airplane, which the air insurance industry does, comes by and takes pictures, everything that's visible from that, the resident has no expectations of privacy on that. So we're balancing what we're finding that the aircraft wouldn't find compared to what aircraft can find. But also we are really trying to avoid giving out information at the parcel level. We are strategizing around giving out information at the aggregated level.
Where is that policy documented? Do we have?
It's on our, when you go through our defensible space process, you see our data security policy, but
So I understand at the micro level or the residential level, but
Yeah.
at the macro level, like where do we begin to cut off what we want to provide and what we want to purvey to the insurance providers and to the state and other counties, and sort of leading the way here to activate the insurance industry to work with us collaboratively as opposed to punitively. So I'm just wondering, since we are collecting these 8 layers of data and we're doing a wonderful job with it, how do we begin to slice the cake so that we have the most impact at the least risk to individual homeowners? Now, I know you addressed part of it there and I appreciate that. I'm just wondering if, as a strategic thought for this agency over the next 2 or 3 years, how much do we want to invest in this through your time and other resources to continue to push this on behalf of the county?
And that is such a huge question. And we know that we're actually, Megan and I have spent a lot of time on this, and we're trying to pull back a little bit on the speed. In fact, we actually have this conversation slated for a board discussion in November. That's how much work that we've been putting towards it. We have been strategizing how to present this to you guys. But we're kind of scaling back the speed at which we're doing it because of the data commons project that I'm talking about, because it really, many agencies within the state are going to have to go through that together. So rather than bumbling through it ourselves, we thought we would do it together with the rest of the agencies.
Okay. So my just final comment is, I think this is emerging as the highest value contribution MWPA might be able to make in its run up to renewal. It's nice to be able to have a few $1,000s to harden your home or have the chipper come out or whatever, and to feel good generally about how the county is leading the way. But the most tangible thing that people are facing right now is quintupling insurance costs, or having no insurance at all. So I just feel like as a strategic investment for us over the next couple of years, how we really do that and how we support the great efforts of our lean team to do that is a major conversation item. So thank you.
I had one.
Yep,
Rachel,
Catherine?
at last night's council meeting, I had a resident come in, very upset about a redwood tree being cut down in, apparently by PG&E. And it got me wondering, do we have the ability to layer on PG&E's vegetation process that they're doing onto this type of map, or is that available information for us?
I'll address that a little bit, and if you have more, Jacob, please feel free to chime in. We meet regularly with PG&E's vegetation management staff who work in this arena. They participate in the advisory technical committee also as non-voting members. There is not fine enough data for us to contribute that at this time to this effort, but it's an ongoing conversation that we're having with them to try to figure out where they're working and when. I don't have that scale of data from them.
Yeah, because they don't communicate well with our residents by any means, but I was just wondering, because they are doing a lot of vegetation management under their scope of practice and service.
Thank you. Yes.
I have two comments. I'd like to associate myself with Director Burke's comments. I think he's spot on about this. I was a volunteer at Ember Stomp, not for MWPA, but for Fire Safe Marin. And at least 5 people came to me with palpable panic in their voices about whether our data is being shared with an insurance company. They have what they perceive to be an adversarial relationship with their homeowner's insurance carrier. And they're worried that our data will fall into the hands of the big bad insurance company. And I told them no, that we've got a policy about that, but I'm not well versed in that. So I just want to let you know that this is an on the ground concern for lots of people, that they not be exposed in some way that they can't control because our data was leaked to the insurance companies and will be used against them. Okay, sorry, Chief, go ahead.
We've actually received Public Request Act or PRAs, Public Request Act requests for DSpace records, not yet from the insurance industry though, but from neighbors. And we have denied those based on solid foundation of law that Megan can explain much better than I can. One of the things when I hear that, because we hear it a lot, I hear it a lot. What I tell the residents is, number one, insurance industry doesn't care about our data. The insurance industry goes out and gets their own data. Number two, 0 residents of Marin have been non-renewed based on our inspection program. And then we emphasize that our reports arm them with information of what actions they can take to make their home more insurable, let alone safer from wildfire.
If we could make that publicly known without poking the bear, the insurance industry, I'd love, I think it would reassure a lot of people.
We've been strategizing on our messaging on how to improve that message.
Okay. My second point is somewhat related, and I don't want to sound like a vulgarian or anything, but we have sunk a lot of effort, time, and money into this data project. It's fascinating and fabulous. And I'm sure all the partners that we work with have proprietary know-how that they use to service our project. 2 of the partners that were shown on the slide were Berkeley and Stanford. They commercialize things all the time. that result from research and other efforts that they put in. And I'm wondering if ultimately, in the long term, we might be able to generate a commercializable result out of this. And whether or not we could recover some costs, not profiteer, but recover some of the costs that we have sunk into this project through commercializing something out of it.
We may have already been exploring that.
Thank you.
Yep. Barbara?
So I hope this is applicable to this issue, but I know we've been working with IBHS on trying to get them to accept our inspections as their inspections. Are we close on that?
We're there, no one's
Well,
exercised
that's what
it.
I thought we were.
We're there, no one's exercised it.
Okay, I mean, and you all are aware that there were 2 bills that would have required insurance companies to take in account mitigation, and they both died. And they were killed before they even came to the floor. So one of the things I had asked for is if there was any way we could get into Ricardo Lara's insurance regulations to have, little foot in the door on trying to include mitigation, even just some sentences. Maybe too late, and I know we don't do advocacy here, but it sure seems like that's a piece that's missing. When I was at Ember Stomp, there were so many folks that were scared, had already lost their insurance, or were trying to go to Cal Fair, and we all know that that's going to be insolvent soon. So if there's anything we can do to sort of push even just a foot in the door about in the future, including mitigation into how they do rate increases or drop. And I would just say, I know we're not going to get there easily, but it really needs to be a piece of the puzzle. And I don't know how our work and the work that people are doing is helping them get insurance, because if you're in the WUI, you're kind of in trouble.
I did sit in on the California Department of Insurance public hearing 2 days ago, 3-hour hearing with probably 30, 40, 50 people that spoke. Some of them were industry experts on both sides, on the cat risk modeling side, advocate side, and residents. And that message that you mentioned right there was brought up at least a half dozen, if not a dozen times. So the message is being heard, and even some of the insurance industry advocates are bringing that into the equation. So the message is heard. So we'll continue to reinforce that message.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Bruce?
I want to compliment you on this data collection monitoring project that you're doing. It's really great. I love to see the partnership. I like the idea of commercialization. One of the issues that we faced here early on was we're in a veg type that doesn't get much attention. It's not commercial timber, and so there's no money. The scientists don't care because they can't get paid to do the work. So thank you. My question is, some of the questions that came up early with MWPA we're working in veg types that we haven't worked in. Eucalyptus, for example. We're working in chaparral here in the Central Coast, Northern Central Coast area. Working in the interior coastal oak woodland type. We're working in broom and grassland. My question is, are you breaking down the data, like subsets of data by veg type? Will you be monitoring representative vegetative types and trying to glean from that the vegetative response associated with treatments?
Yes. So we break down veg type based on what the state definitions are. And we also, if we want to go deeper than that, we do have the Marin fine scale veg map that we can overlay on that. What we are typically doing in this form specifically is we're asking the veg managers what type of vegetation they're treating. So if they're so you can have it selected so that you're in a forest in oak woodland and you're only treating the understory. For example, you're just pulling broom. And so you can treat the understory, and that's its own veg type. We can overlay based on the fine scale veg map, what the dominant species is, what the plant community is. You can then layer a second treatment on top of that. So let's say you're pulling broom and you're limbing up oaks. So then you have your forest understory and you're doing your treatment there, and you have your forest overstory and you're doing your treatment there. Obviously the same overlay. So you can get both your vegetation type in terms of what you're treating and your vegetation type in terms of what the ecology is. And you can then have both of those. And another sort of thing that we're collecting is what the cover is before you treat and what the cover is after. So in the case of broom, let's say it's 60% cover, you pull it all, 0%. When you go back and you retreat that same spot, you're going to still collect cover before and cover after. The gap between your cover after on your first treatment and the cover before on your second treatment is what that regrowth was since you were there the last time. So we can detect how the vegetation responds through that.
Design question, are you putting in permanent plots?
We do actually have permanent plots in the San Rafael San Anselmo fuel reduction zone pilot area. But we are not planning on at this point expanding permanent plots from, like, for example, a surface fuel modeling perspective. We are using recurring photo points. So we go back to the same spots and take photos in cardinal directions regularly so that we can detect long-term change and understand regrowth.
I'm going to pause you guys.
Thank you.
You guys have just had your own party. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole level. Okay. Okay, great.
May I just
lost.
clarify for Bruce, my interest in commercialization isn't felled timber that we could resell. It's about intellectual property that we might be able to create a proprietary process that's licensable, that other public agencies or private parties can pay us a license fee to get access to.
We've started the
Julie?
process already.
You know, we've been doing this now for 4 years, so we probably have like $85 million that we've spent. I think it would be helpful to understand what amount has been spent on data and, all of this, because it seems like it's a lot because we're talking about it a lot, but I think in light of the overall amount versus the all the stuff, I think it's probably a really tiny sliver, but it's making everything else that we're spending that much more productive. So that might be something that we could capture. Thank you.
It's a good point. I'd like to add sort of a comment that, I mean, and I've heard it a little bit across the room today, is obviously the role of insurance right now. That is just absolutely top of mind for so many in our community, understandably. And as much as we want to try to convince the insurance industry that what we're doing, even if we know what we're doing is probably really, really right and really good, I'm not sure the amount of money we can spend will ever convince them. And so I'm wondering if, as we're going down this path, I mean, when I look on their sites around IBHS standards, it's loaded with the insurance industry and the insurance companies supporting that work, right? So that's driving, it's like a dog tail wagging, who's doing what. And I just want to make sure that as we're continuing down this path, if one of our end goals or measures of success is we don't want our community members to be losing home insurance, what do we really need to do to make that happen? And are we putting those steps in place to make that happen? Because I'm maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I know about, two steps of what the insurance industry is all about, but I'm really concerned that we can do so much work and spend so much, and they'll still say, well, that's nice. Where are you at on your IBHS standards? And what are you what ordinance have you passed within your communities to ensure no shake roofs or whatever needs to be in place? And I just go back thinking about Ember Stomp and watching the two side-by-side homes burn. And one home was strictly built around IBH standards, I think, and then the other was not. The other side probably looked like my home. And, you know, so I mean, it's really concerning. And is that the only thing the insurance industry is keen on right now? And that's the questions I think that we need to, you know, struggle with in terms of our work plan and our work. And I don't know if there's really a question built in there, because I know the work that we're doing makes a ton of sense, right? It is absolutely, you know, you could say, and we can look at the data, but if the insurance industry right now is telling us what we need to do, and so for our community not to lose their insurance, do we need to pause and relook at that? And so I don't know what that is, but I mean, I don't, it's a continued conversation, but I think it's where we're at 5 years into this program, spending what we have been spending and still seeing our community at risk of losing home insurance. Are we missing something?
Can I just make a comment? It's a lot more than just the mitigation that's happening. It's climate change, it's fire suppression, it's lack of profit for the reinsurers. It's the fact that our premiums are too low compared to every other state. You know, it's on and on and on. So we're like one facet. You're the expert, Mark. You should address
Good point.
this, not me.
Yes.
This is going to be a multi-year challenge. And I totally agree that if homeowners in Marin are losing insurance or not able to gain insurance because of the wildfire threat, then it's going to be hard to say that Marin Wildfire was a success. And I'm mentally looking at our goals and objectives and measures of success, and several of them, I mean, immediately relate to the item without saying they are relating to the item. So we definitely could look at modifying that. But I also, as hard as it is, we're going to have to, I urge a little bit of patience as we work with the rest of the state, especially in that data commons. I think that data commons initiative is where a lot of the answers are going to come from.
Rachel, I would suggest this was not an agendized topic, and maybe we should make it an agendized topic later so we can have a broader discussion. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about a topic that we didn't provide public information that we were going to be discussing.
Fair enough. All right. Okay. Moving on. Were there any comments from the public?
I see no hands at this time.
All right. And we're not bringing it back for discussion. Thanks. Jacob, thank you. It's amazing amount of work. So thank you. All right, moving on to the Citizens Oversight Committee.
This will be fast. This is normally an item that is on the October agenda to start recruitment. Since we are, I'll let you know now, we're not planning on having an October meeting. So that's why we had the item on here. This is just notifying you that we are going to start recruitment for what is currently called the Citizens Oversight Committee. But we are changing the name through our JPA revisions. We are currently at 12 of our member agencies have approved. The 13th is slated for September 25th. And that is when it becomes official, when we hit 13 member agencies. And I've been coordinating with the rest of the towns and districts about getting this agendized as well. So it'll turn into the Community Oversight Committee. Also, part of the change is the civic group definition is being changed to community-based organization. That is one of the seats that is open for this round of recruitment. We've created some awesome relationships through our wildfire risk perception survey and taken action on the results of the wildfire risk perception survey with several CBOs. So we will work with the CBOs to help with that recruitment. And then finally, this is adding a one-year term non-voting seat for a high school student so we can get a younger perspective into COC. Also have some civic training for some of the high school students in Marin, and we've reached out to Marin County Office of Education to support us with that recruitment.
Any questions for Mark on the Oversight Committee? Nope. Any questions? Do we have this for public comment?
I see no hands at this time.
Okay. And no motion is required on this item. And the minutes from the July 24th and the September 5th meetings were included in the packet. Any requests for future agenda items?
Yeah, we all agree.
Alrighty, something around insurance, I think, and data.
And staff has been strategizing how and when to bring forward what we've been working on in insurance industry, and also slightly related, but not totally related, to data security, which we were already looking at for November.
Right, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you all in November, if not before.
I can make it.